The story takes us to the city of Aldea, where everything begins to unfold on an ordinary day. Suddenly, a red-haired girl finds him and pulls him along, saying they have to go. Another girl who looks just like her smiles sweetly while rushing them to get out of there quickly. Our protagonist, however, doesn't seem happy about this situation at all. The scene cuts to another day, where the young man is in a tavern, having a drink by himself. Just then, a mysterious figure approaches him from behind and says she's finally found him. Next, the woman dressed as a nun grabs him and asks him to come to her estate. Looking closer, we realize it's not just one, but two identical girls inviting him. Jumping to another random day, a blonde girl appears and also grabs him tightly. She asks him to go play with Remy, but the young man refuses, saying he's too busy. The girl is shocked by his response and insists that he go, since her friend has free time. Then, the so-called Remy shows up, asking him to go with them for just a little while, leaving him confused. With that, the young man wonders how he ended up in this situation, and the story goes back in time a bit. It all begins again in a dark, silent forest at night. Two strange men appear, and one of them calls out to our protagonist, the newcomer of the group. The boy named Kai, who is a master public executioner, nervously answers the call. The bandit then announces they're going to sleep, and tells Kai to keep watch because of the bounty. He also orders the young man to take care of the hostages if they start screaming. But the man doubts that will happen because, according to him, the prisoners don't even have the strength anymore. So, Kai is left alone at the camp, just observing everything with a serious expression. The young man despairs and starts to wonder how things got to this point. His last memory was of a car accident, and he questions if he might have passed away. Right after that, he simply woke up in that strange place without understanding a thing. Looking up at the sky with two moons, he feels like he knows this place from somewhere. At that moment, the boy realizes he's in the world of fancy, roomy fantasy, a game he used to play. He then snaps back to reality and realizes he's in a bad spot, siding with the story's villains. The young man gets very worried, wondering why this had to happen to him. He turns and notices a covered wagon nearby in the bandits' camp. As he approaches to investigate, he's startled to see a cage inside it. Inside the cage, he sees two girls and realizes that the villains in the game are always eliminated. With imminent danger, the young man thinks the best option is to simply run away as fast as possible. He then starts looking for a map and money, thinking that there's nothing wrong with doing bad things to bad people. Upon finding a map, he becomes more confident, because if this is the game world, he can escape easily. However, before leaving, our protagonist decides he needs to do one little thing first. With a lantern in his hand, he approaches the cage where the girls are trapped and scared. The young man hesitates for a moment, not knowing how to get the attention of the girls inside. Mustering his courage, he introduces himself and tells the three prisoners they must escape with him. The girls, however, are suspicious and question the young man's escape proposal. The red-haired one immediately accuses him of trying to trick them all with a ploy. Next, the white-haired one asks in tears why they should trust him now. The protagonist is left speechless and can't find an answer to the girl's question. Seeing his silence, the redhead states that his plan didn't work out as he expected. To turn the situation around, the young man kneels and apologizes for taking so long to save them. The two prisoners are completely surprised and confused by the boy's actions. At that, Kai stands up and says that he's actually an intelligence agent who infiltrated the group. Even knowing he's lying, the young man thinks the priority is to make the girls believe him. With that, he hurries the girls to leave quickly, because if he's discovered, he'll be a goner. The redhead then reveals she can't run because her leg is injured and holding her back. The white-haired one also adds that she can't see a single thing. On top of that, they show that the blonde girl named Remy is very sick and completely exhausted. Because of this, they believe that even if they escaped, they would end up passing out along the way. Even so, they thank him for his help, as knowing he's not an enemy is enough for them. Our hero is a little surprised and speechless at the girl's gratitude. At that moment, the blonde girl who was unconscious begins to move slowly. With great difficulty, young Remy reaches out her hand and asks our protagonist for help. Kai is shocked and can't believe what he's seeing happen in front of him. He then clenches his fist tightly and says a firm no to their situation. The young man states that escaping is better than staying, and if they can't walk, he will carry them. The girls are astonished by his determination and ask him what he's saying. Kai assures them he has a map and knows the area, so they don't need to worry about anything. He then extends his hand and tells the other two to hold on to him as well, so they can leave. With that, the group finally begins to flee through the dark forest, with the young man carrying them all. At that moment, the young man realizes his current body is very muscular and different from his old one. Even surrounded by the girls, he tries to stay focused on the mission of escaping there alive. As he runs through the woods, the protagonist feels relieved that no one is chasing them. Then he remembers the map he had grabbed earlier before all this confusion began. Looking at the object, he notices the name of the city of Aldea, a name he created in the game himself. The map glows, and the young man realizes that somehow his game data is still there. With this new information, he becomes more confident because he knows exactly where they need to go now. The young man continues to carry the three girls through the dark forest with great difficulty. After a long walk, he finally reaches his destination, a well-hidden treehouse. One of the girls then curiously asks what place they were in now. The young man explains that it's basically a hideout he built himself a while ago. At that, he remembers a stone tablet with strange writings that was nearby. With that in mind, the boy puts the girls down and asks them to wait a moment. He approaches the stone and remembers the keyword to activate a secret magic. A glowing magic circle appears, and a hidden door in the tree opens for the group. Kai enters and is surprised that it's not all dusty like he imagined it would be. Our hero enters the hideout, still carrying the blonde girl who was very weak. The redhead is impressed and says he's definitely not an ordinary agent like he said before. The white-haired girl is amazed by the fact that he built that in the middle of nowhere. The protagonist replies that he's also surprised by everything and has the girls sit down. Everyone looks worriedly at Remy, who was lying down and looking very unwell due to her illness. Seeing the situation, the young man remembers that he should have some items stored there. The red-haired girl asks if there's anything they can give her friend to eat. Kai then starts searching in a chest for anything that might be edible for them. Luckily for him, he finds the chest full of potions and armor, just like in the game. He says he found some medicine, but the redhead doubts that anything ordinary will work on her. However, the girl's jaw drops when she sees the purple potion he's holding in his hand. The young man explains that it's not a normal medicine and that it should work without any problems. The still shocked girl comments on the color of that potion, which was very different from normal. Kai internally boasts, saying it looks rare because he played that game to the very end. This potion is super powerful and heals everything instantly, but it was very difficult to make. With that, he hands the vials to the girls, who remain very impressed by everything. He calculates that with 117 potions, money won't be a problem, and he can sell them. The girls wonder who he really is, as a simple agent wouldn't have something so valuable. The young man gets a little embarrassed by the question and looks away, not knowing what to say. He then asks the girl not to ask any more questions for both their sakes at that moment. Finally, the protagonist tells the other two to use the potion as well to recover. He says he doesn't want to have to carry 3 people around anymore, so it was better for them to drink it. The white-haired girl asks if the legendary elixir really exists, and if there's one for her too. The young man confirms that there is, and hands one of the vials of the purple potion to the white-haired girl. With the item in her hands, she is overjoyed and says she just can't believe it. Next, the young man turns to the sick blonde and says it's now her turn to receive the medicine. Very carefully, he gives the potion to the girl who is lying down and very sick in bed. The magic medicine begins to take effect almost instantly on the unconscious young woman's body. A glowing aura envelops the girl as the potion heals all her wounds and her illness. Our protagonist watches everything with a very satisfied smile on his face upon seeing that it worked. The blonde girl finally wakes up, fully healed, and thanks the young man for the help he gave her. He advises that for now, she just needs to rest as the medicine doesn't cure mental fatigue. Meanwhile, the potion's effect also spreads through the bodies of the other two girls. With the vials now empty, the young man watches the two girls recovering little by little. They feel the power of the elixir coursing through their veins and healing all their previous problems. In the meantime, the young man already starts thinking about what kind of reward he will ask for this. Suddenly, they scream with joy because one can see and the other can finally walk again. The young man says he doesn't know how long they've suffered from this, but now it's all over. Seeing their happiness, he decides to give them some space to enjoy the moment. The next day, the protagonist is shocked to learn that they were abducted from the city of Aldea. Tired, he realizes that the journey to take them back home is going to be a long one. The redhead gets annoyed and tells him to complain to his friends, since it's all their fault. He then asks if anyone can use teleportation magic, but they deny it on the spot. The young man agrees with their logic and gives an awkward laugh about the whole situation. He thinks that if he were in his game character, he could teleport without any problems. The white-haired girl comments that she heard only one person in the past could use that magic. The young man gets nervous with the direction of the conversation and tries to change the subject as quickly as possible. So, he simply asks how they are feeling now after recovering. The white-haired girl replies that she still hasn't gotten used to seeing, but is trying her best. The redhead also says that her leg is great, and that she's very grateful for everything. Finally, she asks him to stop calling her, and introduces herself as Karen Dieraldi. Next, the white-haired girl also introduces herself to him as Nina Qualier Ansage. Our hero then confirms that the young woman still lying in bed is Remy Tralia Alblera. With that, the young man gets confused and finds their names much harder to remember. He says the problem now is getting them back, and Karen asks if he will protect her. The young man, however, replies that he can't give any guarantee that he'll be able to. The redhead is completely shocked and asks why he can't promise that to them. The protagonist then explains that no matter how strong someone is, there's no guarantee. He thinks that unlike in a game, real combat has consequences, and he wants to avoid fighting. Karen argues that they don't know how many enemies there are or how strong they might be. Nina agrees, saying that if they want to survive, it's best to avoid combat whenever possible. The two realize that they each only have one life, and that if they're taken out, it will be the end of everything. With that, the young man states that he will do everything he can to avoid any kind of direct confrontation. With that, Karen faces him and asks if he has any kind of plan to get them out of there. The protagonist responds with a smile that it's a bit difficult to answer that question, just like that. Faced with his answer, the two girls become extremely irritated with his lack of seriousness. He then begins to explain his theory that the enemies must be watching the city of Waffer. Pointing to the map, he says that since he joined them there, they will assume he has some connection. Therefore, the plan is to go south and pay for a wagon in a village to throw them off. Karen, however, is worried and says they don't have any money to pay for any of that. The young man reveals that he stole money from the bandits, and that they can use it to buy clothes. Nina then interrupts him and asks why he is going to all this trouble to help them. She reminds him that he used a rare elixir and wasn't even a real agent, as he had said. The young man looks awkward and just nods his head, not knowing what to answer her. He lies, saying that he lives as an agent, but thinks to himself that he's terrible at lying. To get away with it, he says they should thank their parents, because he's just following orders. At that moment, he notices that Remy is awake in bed, watching the entire conversation. The protagonist is startled and asks the blonde girl if she's awake to say something. The young woman replies that she is, and the young man thinks it took her a while to finally wake up. He says they need to refine the plan, and that at night they should wash up in the river to get clean. Nina, however, says that she can use purification magic to do it more easily. The young man tells them to do that, as he will go wash in the river so as not to be a bother. Karen is surprised that he doesn't know how to use that magic and says it would be useful for an agent. He explains that useful magics draw attention, and she says he really isn't an ordinary guy. With that, Nina uses her magic and cleans the other two girls, who are happy with the result. Meanwhile, our hero takes the moment to relax and take a bath in the river. Later, everyone gathers around the map to plan the next steps of their journey. Suddenly, a mysterious figure in a full suit of armor appears in the darkness of the night. This being then guides the three girls out of the hideout to begin their journey back. A week later in the city of Aldea, a guard shouts orders to his subordinates. Our hero, now in the armor, observes the city and notices that it's quite busy. Behind him, the three girls celebrate with relief, having finally returned home. A guard with a scar recognizes them and is very happy to see that they are safe. Karen then thanks the young man and says they only returned safely because of his help. The city guard bows in gratitude and states that they can never thank him enough. He then asks the noble ladies to wait for an escort inside the local guardhouse. With that, Nina turns to the armored hero and asks what he intends to do now. The young man replies that his plan is to simply stay in that city for a little while to rest. The redhead, however, says that's not what she meant and asks about his future plans. She questions if he will report to his superiors, and our protagonist is surprised. Not knowing what to say, he thinks that he has no plan and will have to improvise something. The guards offer a reward, but the young man refuses, saying he doesn't have time for that right now. Exhaustion finally hits him hard, and he thinks he needs to rest his body soon. He then tells the girls to follow the instructions and wait in a separate room for safety. They agree with his caution and thank him once again for all the help he provided. Remy, who had been quiet until now, is also instructed to go with the other two girls. The blonde girl just nods her head and moves on without saying a single word. The protagonist says goodbye to the guard and says he'll leave the rest of the work to him now. The man tries to thank him again, but the young man in armor says there's no need for that. He turns and announces that he's going into the city to take care of some important matters. The guard welcomes him, and our hero thanks him as he walks through the city streets. Right after he walks away, the guards start talking about the girl's mysterious savior. One of them comments on how incredible that guy was, but the leader disagrees, saying he's more than that. The head of the guard states with absolute certainty that the armored young man is actually a monster. He says he tried to use an appraisal skill, but only saw a fake item from a level 3 dungeon. The guard remembers the shock he felt upon discovering the young man was actually level 8. He also thinks about how the young man single-handedly took down a criminal syndicate and rescued them. On top of everything, our hero also ensured their safety before entering the city. With all this information, the guard concludes that he is undoubtedly a war veteran. One of the soldiers comments that he would have loved to see the face under that heavy helmet. Another guard scolds him for not even checking the stranger's identity beforehand. The leader defends his decision, saying they couldn't treat their savior like a criminal. On second thought, the soldier agrees, since he used legendary elixirs like it was nothing. The captain of the guards is shocked and asks in confusion about the so-called legendary elixirs. A soldier explains that he didn't notice, but the 3 girls' ailments were cured. The guard then reveals that he heard from them that the hero handed over the medicine as if it were nothing. The 2 soldiers laugh in admiration and comment that what that guy did was simply insane. In light of this, the captain orders that everything about the mysterious hero be reported to their superiors. He shouts for his men to obey the order immediately, and they run off, startled. Next, we are introduced to Karen Dyer-Aldi, the daughter of a very important noble ducal house. Then we see Nina Quolier and Sage, a descendant of the founding lineage of the Holy Church. And finally, we have Remy Traliau Blera, the daughter of the leader of numerous merchant organizations. The narrator explains that the hero was with the Big 3 and refused any reward. On top of everything, he is an experienced conqueror with an item from a level 8 dungeon. Finally, we discover that the captain is actually a member of a secret organization of the Empire. The young man observes the city of Aldea and realizes he has finally arrived at the place he was looking for in the real world. With that, he notices that the streets and houses are exactly the same as in the game he used to play in the past. Looking ahead, the young man can see the treasure hunters guild shining from a distance on the horizon, but the hero feels that his body is at its physical limit because of all the effort and weight of this journey. At that moment, the protagonist notices that everyone around is staring at him in a very strange and curious way. The young man then asks if there is a problem, while a resident is scared to death of his intimidating presence. But the young man believes that in the central district, there must be many other people wearing heavy armor like his. With that, he remembers that he equipped these rare items just to slightly increase his fighting power and defense. At that instant, the protagonist decides that the best thing to do is to hurry and find a comfortable inn. Then someone shouts that he looks very cool, and the young man gets a little flustered by this unexpected compliment. But a little girl suddenly hugs him, leaving our hero completely confused about what is happening. The scene cuts to a luxurious mansion, where someone is celebrating the safe return of young Karen to her home. At that, the redhead's father hugs her, crying nonstop for having his dear daughter back safe and sound. But the man can't stop sobbing, and the girl asks him to calm down and stop the drama. The nobleman then notices that her leg has been completely healed because of the legendary elixir the young man gave her. With that, the girl shows that she is fully recovered and that the young man's medicine was indeed very powerful. The man reflects that even with all his influence, he was never able to get his hands on that rare and valuable potion. But the redhead says that the young man handed over the item without hesitation and just asked for payment someday in the future. The father then reads the report and confirms that a supposed secret agent saved the three girls, acting all alone. Karen is shocked to discover that it wasn't actually her father who sent that mysterious savior to help them. The nobleman explains that if he had contact with someone so strong, he would have gotten the cure for his daughter a long time ago. At that moment, the girl thinks that the hero lied about being an agent, just to give them hope during the escape. The man then analyzes the situation and tries to understand who that armored young man who protected them really was. With that, the young redhead remembers the dangerous criminal group that kidnapped her on the way to the city. But her father wonders if the young man's real mission was to capture the bandits or just perform the rescue. The man then decides that they need to send an official letter of thanks to the young warriors' organization, but the nobleman warns that doing so could be dangerous and put the savior's life at great risk. With that, he explains that an agent's identity must be kept secret to prevent him from suffering severe punishment. The girl then asks if her father knows which group the young man belongs to, and the man replies that he does. At that moment, news arrives that the entire criminal gang was captured on the outskirts of that distant small village. With that, the redhead explains that the savior took a much longer route just to ensure their safety during the escape. The girl's father places his hand on the papers and states that the young man's past is exactly what he was already suspecting. At that moment, the nobleman comments on the possibility that the group that captured the criminal gang is the special unit called Verdar. Karen is completely shocked to hear the name of this secret organization and wonders if he's being serious about it. The scene shows the crest of Verdar, which is a very famous elite group known for solving difficult problems throughout the kingdom. With this, we discover that this is an organization under the direct control of the imperial capital, responsible for maintaining public order. Besides being known as the elite of the elite, the members of this group are treasure hunters of the highest level. At that, the man thinks that the young man might hold a command position and have authorization to act completely alone on dangerous missions. The Duke seriously warns his daughter never to reveal the young man's real identity, as he only lied to facilitate the rescue. With a worried expression, the red-haired girl affirms that she understands the gravity of the situation and promises to guard this secret with her life. Looking at the city, the nobleman decides that they need to repay this debt by tracking down the hero through his all-black armor. He then tells Karen to call the girl named Lifia so that the two of them together can invite the young man to visit their mansion. Hearing the order, the young woman quickly leaves her father's office to carry out the task she was given at that moment. Alone in the room, the man lets out a heavy sigh as he tries to process all the information he received about the mysterious warrior. At that moment, the Duke hopes that the savior is one of the pillars of the organization, so that he won't suffer severe punishment. With that, the three influential families reach the same conclusion that they must find the young man in the city as soon as possible. The next day, in a tavern in Aldea, our hero is enjoying a delicious and very juicy meal. The owner of the place laughs cheerfully and says he is very happy to see the young man enjoying the food from his establishment. Suddenly, the innkeeper asks if he is the same young man who was wearing that heavy black armor the day before. He continues, saying that he was scared at first but realizes the young man is very polite, unlike the other hunters. Curious, the man asks if the young man is from out of town, and the hero replies that he came from a place very far from there. At that instant, the door opens, and a soldier in white armor enters the place, saying he has an important question. The guard asks aloud if anyone has seen a man wearing all black gear visiting that inn. Kai and the tavern owner exchange surprised glances, and are left completely speechless by the sudden arrival of that soldier. The two remain silent for a few seconds as the atmosphere in the place becomes very tense and uncomfortable for everyone. Panicking, our protagonist puts his hands together and quietly begs the innkeeper to hide him immediately. The owner of the establishment gets nervous with the unusual request and doesn't know how to act in that complicated situation, but the soldier repeats the question firmly and wants to know right away if the mysterious man in black has passed through that place. With that, the young man continues to beg and says that if anything goes wrong, he will take all the blame for the lie told. The man then takes a deep breath and lies to the guard, saying that unfortunately, no one with that description has shown up there today. The soldier thanks him for his cooperation and leaves the place, slamming the door as silence takes over the empty tavern. With that, the bar owner faces the young man and asks what he really is to be attracting so much attention from everyone. But another person suddenly enters, and a holy nun asks if someone wearing black has come to stay there today. The young man then goes back to begging for secrecy, since that woman belongs to the most important church on the entire continent. The innkeeper sighs and says that unfortunately, no one with that kind of look has been seen around these parts lately. At that, the nun thanks him for his time and leaves the establishment, leaving our hero a little calmer. However, a third person appears at the entrance, and a female guard in armor asks again about the man in black. At this moment, the boy throws himself onto the counter and begs the man, for the love of God, not to tell her the absolute truth. The inn owner lies for the third time and states with absolute certainty that he hasn't seen anyone resembling that individual. The woman then leaves very frustrated and wonders where that mysterious warrior could have fled to in such a hurry. As soon as the door closes, the innkeeper glares at the young man with an unfriendly look and asks what he really did. The protagonist's eyes are spinning from so much pressure, and he can't even think straight with all this total chaos. With that, the man completely freaks out and shouts that the city's three greatest powers are all hunting the poor guy now. The young man responds, breaking out in a cold sweat, that maybe he overdid something without realizing it and feels very guilty for all this confusion. The man then slams his hands on the table and orders the young man to get out of there and solve this huge problem quickly. At that instant, our hero gets a grim expression and wonders what on earth he's going to do with his life from now on. Inside a mansion, we see a girl asking her red-haired friend if she is okay. The girl then assures her that she is great and that there's no need to worry because her leg is healed. With a smile on her face, she thanks the other for always taking care of her with such attention. Her friend says she is happy with her improvement, but a little sad because their routine is over. Changing the subject, she gets serious and starts talking about something else very important at the moment. The two wonder how they still haven't been able to find their savior anywhere. One of them then winks and says that he is definitely hiding on purpose to avoid being found. At that, the other girl comments that her father also informed her about the whole current situation. They worry that he might be punished for having used such a rare universal elixir on them. The redhead then complains that he tricked them by calling the item his personal stash, just so they would use it. Her friend agrees and says that he also wanted to hide the fact that he belongs to an organization. Karen gets worried and hopes that the hero doesn't receive a very severe punishment for it. The other girl teases her for being sad and says that he came to save them on his own accord. She then winks and comments that what he did was not a bad thing for them at all. With a blushing face, the girl gets flustered and tells her friend to stop with this joke. The girl then says that he risked his own life to save them despite all the risks. Karen asks when she met him, and the other replies that it was for only an hour at most. Nina and Remy also told similar stories and want to thank him and see him again soon. The girl then claims that she's the one who thinks about the young man the most, and her friend tells her not to exaggerate. Nervous and embarrassed, the girl denies it on the spot, saying it's not what it looks like at all. Back at the tavern, the owner warns that rumors are everywhere and the search is intense. Tired, the young man complains that if there are no other candidates, he will surely be the only one sought. The innkeeper points out that he's the only one who fits the description, and the young man fears the possible punishment. He imagines that the lightest punishment he could receive would be to be banished from the city forever. The man says that hiding him is difficult, but advises him not to switch ends for safety. The owner reveals that there is a reward of 3 million for anyone who reports his current location. The protagonist is in shock and asks why the man didn't just turn him in right away. The man says it's too late and that the young man is important and the families don't want to attract attention. The young man denies being someone important, but the tavern owner just laughs at the whole situation. Finally, he tells the young man to put on his gear and leave the next day, but to enjoy today. The bar owner tells the young man to have fun, and he smiles at the recommendation he received. The young man then leaves the tavern and observes a large, very imposing building in front of him. As he walks through the streets, he thinks that even if he's kicked out the next day, it's no problem. With that in mind, he decides he's going to make the most of the time he has left in the city. The boy then sees a clock tower and remembers climbing it once to see the view. Arriving at the entrance, our hero complains that the fee to go up is still very expensive, as always, but he climbs the stairs, thinking he'll accept the price since he could be banished at any moment. The young man continues to climb the long staircase, a little out of breath from all the physical effort. Suddenly, he stops midway and is startled by something that appears in front of him out of nowhere. A mysterious red-haired woman wearing an elegant dress stares at him intimidatingly. Looking closer, he realizes she's wearing a black mask and is watching him with a smile on her face. The protagonist is completely shocked and speechless by the presence of this unknown woman. With great difficulty, the boy finally manages to say a very shy hello to the mysterious redhead. The woman then responds with a very calm good morning, while continuing to smile at the frightened young man. At that, he remembers a rumor from the game about a mysterious character who appeared in that tower. The two then reach the top of the tower and observe the city's landscape in complete silence. The woman breaks the ice and says that the view is great for clearing one's mind and thinking a little about life. Looking at the city, the young man agrees with her and says the view is indeed very beautiful from there. He then turns and curiously asks her the reason for coming to that specific place. The redhead replies that she came for the same reason he did, which was to clear her head a bit. Next, the masked woman changes the subject and starts talking about something else with the young man. She asks if he knows the man who wears all black gear, and he gets tense. The young man looks awkward and replies that this guy has been the talk of the town. The woman reveals that many people are looking for him, including herself, because she really wants to meet him in person. Our hero is confused and asks if the so-called warrior did something bad to be so sought after. The redhead assures him that's not it at all, and that he's not being sought for doing something wrong. The boy then asks why they are looking for him, and in the background we see guards and a nun. She apologizes and says that part of the information is unfortunately completely confidential. The young man thinks that's fair and feels relieved to know they're not looking for him for something bad. At that moment, a carriage arrives, and the woman apologizes as her escort has finally shown up. But before leaving, she turns to the young man, as if she wants to say something more. Our protagonist then asks the masked woman what she would like to talk to him about. With a smile, she says that perhaps there will be some progress in this search for the warriors soon. The redhead thanks the young man for his concern and turns to leave the clock tower. As she descends the stairs, the young man stands there, just watching the mysterious woman leave. Alone at the top of the tower, the protagonist wonders who that woman really was. The scene cuts to the night, where a young woman thanks Karen for picking her up at that place. The redhead says of course she would, because by leaving like this, they could finally find that person. The other jokes that it's an afterthought, but Karen assures her it's not and tells her not to tease. With a smile on her face, the long-haired girl apologizes for the joke she made with her friend. She says that wearing the mask is embarrassing, but that she's happy Karen came to get her there. Next, the young woman reveals that earlier she met someone for the first time at the clock tower. The short-haired girl becomes suspicious and asks if he heard any rumors about her friend. The other girl explains that at first, she was on guard, but then she realized it wasn't like that at all. She remembers that he spoke to her in a casual tone, and that it was a precious moment for her. The young woman says she asked about the man in black, but, as expected, she couldn't get any information. Karen is disappointed and comments that according to her father, the young man may have already left the city, but her friend remembers that the gentleman said there might be some kind of development soon. The redhead then asks her to describe what the tourist she met at the clock tower looked like. The other describes him as a gentleman with a scar, and Karen gets agitated by the information. She confirms that the scar was on the left side, just as the young redhead had said before. With the confirmation, the girl suddenly stands up and rushes to the carriage door in a hurry. The woman shouts for the coachman to go back to the clock tower as fast as possible, and he gets startled. The long-haired girl is confused and asks her friend what got into her to act like that all of a sudden. The redhead then explains that the man has a scar near his left eye, and that's why it's him. She reveals that it was a secret with her father, because knowing his appearance would hinder his work. Hearing this, the other girl is speechless, and just watches her friend with a serious expression. At that moment, the carriage stops, and the two girls look out the window, very curious. The redhead runs out of the carriage, and her friend follows her to try to understand the whole situation. With that, the two run back to the clock tower in hopes of finding the young man again. They run up the stairs, panting, to get to the top of the place as quickly as possible, but when they get there, they realize there's no one else there and become very sad about it. The scene then changes to the Treasure Hunters Guild in the city of Aldea on an ordinary day. The guild manager, named Garad, complains that the information in a hunter's file is scarce. He reads a report from 3 days ago from the guards about a man in black armor who arrived. The document says he rescued the daughters of the 3 great houses and captured the bandits all by himself. Garag reads the papers and doesn't understand how the news of the kidnapping leaked to everyone. With that, he realizes that the more he investigates, the more his theory makes sense in his head. He then remembers having forbidden all hunters from having contact with the so-called man in black, but he discovers that it was the armored hero who helped his daughter when she got lost in the city. The little girl even asked the mysterious warrior to carry her, and he did so without complaining. Seeing the scene, the girl's mother bowed and apologized profusely for all the trouble she caused. Despite being grateful, the guild manager hopes the young man returns to the imperial capital soon. Suddenly, an employee runs into his office and shouts that there's an emergency. She then reveals that the person they believe to be the man in black is right there at the guild. The manager is completely exhausted by the news and asks for a little rest for himself. At that moment, the guild door slowly opens, revealing the figure that has just arrived. The mysterious warrior in black armor then enters the place, and everyone stares at him, frightened. With a forced smile, Garad welcomes him and says it's an honor to have him there. He continues his speech and officially welcomes him to the Aldea branch of the Hunters Guild. Seeing the scene, a female hunter asks if the manager is really using such polite language. Annoyed, the man calls the others idiots and says they don't understand the situation at all. He then turns back to smile at the warrior and asks the reason for his visit today. The armored young man replies that he's just there for an observational tour of the guild. The manager is a little confused by the answer and repeats the man in black's words. Seeing the reaction, the hero asks if by any chance this type of tour is not allowed in the place. Garad quickly denies it and says that of course it's allowed, with a very nervous smile on his face. He wonders if he should wait a bit, or if it would be better to make him confess his motives right away. The man wonders if the young man sensed that the guild already knows something, and that's why he doesn't want to talk. With that, he realizes that the warrior is on a completely different level from everyone else there. At that, the manager remembers that he once dreamed of joining Vertar, but never managed to. No matter how famous he became, he was never called to be part of the group. Seeing true power, he realizes that his own strength was never enough for it. The man in black then asks to see the manager's office, since he's on a tour. Garad agrees immediately and tells the warrior to make himself at home, as he will accept the offer. With that, the manager guides the armored young man to his office as requested. As they walk away, the other hunters just watch the scene in complete silence. A woman asks what they thought, and a young man says he seemed to be leaving an opening on purpose. With that, he believes the warrior's plan was to crush anyone who underestimated him there. Another hunter agrees and says that if the manager hadn't warned them, someone would have taken the bait. The woman thinks that for Garad to be so respectful, the warrior must be unstoppable in a fight. One of the young men then concludes that they would certainly be no match for the man in black. Another wonders who would be stronger in a fight, him or an S-rank creature, and so a series of misunderstandings began, putting Kai in a very complicated position. The manager says goodbye to the warrior and thanks him for all the help he offered that day. But the protagonist thinks that the guild is a terrible place and that he will never go back there. He feared that the three groups looking for him might finally find him inside the place. The young man wonders why everyone was staring at him as if he were a very dangerous assassin. In the game, the manager was rude, but in real life, he was surprisingly polite and good-humored. With that, the armored young man wonders why he was treated like such a VIP. Even though he's confused, he thinks that in the end, the whole situation was a good experience. Now standing in the middle of the street, our hero doesn't know what he's going to do with his life from now on. He realizes that he can't just walk around the city wearing such heavy armor. Suddenly, a very luxurious carriage stops right next to him, and he is left completely confused. Then Karen gets out of it and shouts excitedly that she finally managed to find him. He recognizes the crest of a ducal house and remembers that the girl's name was Karen Dyer. The redhead approaches and asks where on earth he has been hiding all this time. The protagonist responds awkwardly that he was just resting a bit at the local inn. Annoyed, the girl shouts that this information never reached them and that they looked for him a lot. The young man explains that he asked the bar owner for a favor, and the girl is shocked by the revelation. She glares at him angrily while the armored young man is left completely speechless by it all. The girl thinks that he's perfectly capable of doing that, and he wonders what she's talking about. The other young woman then says it's nothing, and that it's surely something he can't talk about. Karen's friend appears at the carriage door and asks how things are going over there. Our hero recognizes the voice and hair color of the woman he met earlier in the tower. The girl formally introduces herself as Leafia Dear Aldi and apologizes for the delayed introduction. She thanks him for saving them and says that words are not enough to express her gratitude. Suddenly, the young woman invites him and asks if he has any free time to spend with them today. The armored young man is a bit suspicious and asks what would happen if he said yes. She replies that they would go to her mansion, but the young man refuses on the spot, saying he's not free. The younger redhead is furious with the refusal, while the older one just finds the situation amusing. The protagonist breaks into a cold sweat, thinking he could be punished for acting rudely towards nobles. The two girls stare at him with mischievous smiles on their faces, making him even more nervous. Then one of them grabs him by the arm and tells him not to say that and to simply accompany them. Karen insists with a smile that he at least let them thank him for everything. The other girl then says that they even prepared a very comfortable carriage just for him. The protagonist feels sick inside the armor, while the two girls smile at him. Once inside the mansion, the armored young man feels if he's being taken into custody. Liffey explains that they are grateful, because it would be bad for the family's prestige if the search failed. Our hero agrees, but says that he still can't quite understand the whole situation. Karen then takes the chance, and says there's something she'd like to ask him now. The armored young man, however, finds her formal way of speaking quite intimidating and strange. Annoyed by the comment, the redhead says she'll speak normally, and he says he prefers that. He then asks what she wanted to know, and the girl is a bit too embarrassed to answer. She gets straight to the point and asks about the legendary elixirs he used to save them. The young woman questions if he was punished, and if that's why he hasn't shown up in the city until now. The young man denies it and explains that the potions were already his, so there was no reason for a scolding. The two girls are completely shocked by the mysterious warrior's casual response. They get worried and ask if he's really okay, and if there's anything they can do to help. Liffey then insists and asks him to at least give them a summary of the whole situation. Our hero panics because he can't keep up with the conversation at all. He's left wondering how he's going to convince the two of them that everything is fine with him now. He then says that if her legs are healed, he's happy, and that she should enjoy it. The young man confidently states that he will solve his own problems, and they are enchanted. The two girls fall silent with blushing faces, not knowing what to say to the young man. Back in the carriage, Liffey thanks him again, and he thinks the conversation connected somehow. At that moment, the protagonist says he has just one request to make of the two girls there. They look at him with curiosity and ask what kind of request he would like to make. The armored young man then begins to explain that it's about when he goes to meet their father. He asks them to help him in case he acts rudely and makes the Duke very angry. With that, the young man says he won't need payment for the medicine, and they are in shock. The redhead shouts, asking if that's really the price for such a legendary and valuable elixir. He confirms that he's serious because he fears authority and is just an ordinary person. Our hero thinks to himself that ensuring his own life is the most important thing. The two girls are silent and completely speechless at the young man's proposal. Liffey thinks this excuse to hide his position is a bit weak and unconvincing. Karen also agrees and thinks it was a very weak attempt to disguise the truth. The armored protagonist then simply says he understands the situation and accepts the deal. The redhead assures him that her father wouldn't get angry no matter how rudely he acted towards them. Liffey also accepts the deal, and our hero is relieved as this helps a lot. Out of curiosity, Karen asks if he's going to keep wearing that armor all the time. The young man thinks to himself that it would be rude not to take off the armor at that moment, but Liffey says that she personally would very much like to see the face under that helmet. The younger one is shocked by her sister's boldness and says that's very rude of her. Not quite understanding, our hero is confused by the situation and takes off his helmet. The older woman just smiles, very satisfied with the outcome of that conversation. She thinks he is a sincere person and not arrogant, but that it's hard to read his thoughts. The young woman believes he must be focused on acting as a guard in case something happens. At that, she understands why Karen liked him so much, as he is different from other hunters. She reflects that the more fame and power treasure hunters end up gaining in life, the more they end up being viewed with great envy and greed by all other people. As a result, many of them begin to flaunt their status and presence wherever they go. But this man, even with fame and power, remains completely humble and discreet. He risked his life facing a criminal organization just to save her sister. She feels indebted, but he doesn't take advantage of it, and she wonders how much he is adored by others. Our hero says he's getting nervous, and Karen says that for someone like him, that's pretty lame. He then replies that it's a shame she was saved by a guy as lame as he is. The redhead shouts angrily, saying that's not it at all and that she's not that ungrateful. Liffey finds it funny that someone from Vertar would say they're nervous in front of a simple duke. She thinks he anticipates Karen's need for attention and that the young woman will argue with him. As daughters of a duke, they often have to deal with other important nobles. Because of the age difference between them and the other nobles of that large region of the kingdom, and also because many of them are actually looking for a marriage partner. This ends up creating very uncomfortable and annoying situations for the two young girls. In the past, other nobles never made time for young Karen because of her condition. The older sister thinks that seeing the younger one having fun with the young man makes her very happy. She remembers that Karen really wanted to see the hero up close when she heard he was at the guild. Levi also remembers that he agreed to go in the carriage out of consideration for their father's reputation. Furthermore, he tried to turn down the reward for the legendary elixir that healed Karen's leg. That medicine was so rare it could buy an entire castle and cure any type of illness. With that in mind, the woman wonders if there really is anyone else with a character like his. She then starts thinking of a way to stay involved with the young man somehow. Suddenly, the young woman asks how long he plans to stay in that bustling city. With a smile, she offers to arrange a residence for him if he wants to live there. Our hero replies that the city is nice, but everything will depend on his mood at the moment. The woman understands that he actually means that everything depends on the orders of his superiors. She reflects that just by him acting, it's enough for many lives to be saved. Livia thinks about her sister's life and wonders if what she is feeling is just selfishness. With a determined look, the girl decides that she will not let this opportunity simply slip away. At that moment, the scene cuts to the arrival of the carriage at a very large and luxurious mansion. The armored young man opens the door and prepares to get out and finally meet their parents. All the servants and guards are lined up at the entrance to welcome the visitor. The protagonist is completely shocked and doesn't understand what on earth is happening there. Livia explains with a smile that this is their way of showing respect for his deeds. He asks if they are serious and says there's no need to go that far. The woman assures him that it was an unanimous decision and that there is no problem with that reception. With a smile, she warns that if anyone complains, they will deal with it appropriately. The armored young man tenses up and just nods his head, not knowing what to say to them. He feels that if he refuses, they will apply a horrible punishment, so he accepts the situation. The head housekeeper and the captain of the guard approach and thank him for coming. They bow to him and sincerely thank him for making that long journey. The housekeeper then announces that her masters are waiting in another room and that she will guide him. The two girls say goodbye and wish him a good time with their parents inside. He asks what they are going to do, and the young woman say they will wait outside for him. Karen then explains that they will separate from him for now, so as not to interrupt the conversation. With that, the older girl announces that they will be in the next room in case something suddenly happens. She also guarantees that if they are needed, the response will be immediate and without any delay. But the protagonist thinks it would have been better if the two had stayed there with him. Suddenly, the captain of the guard gets startled and replies with a hi as, a little nervous about the situation. The warrior then hands his sword to the guard and asks him to hold the item for a while. The captain is shocked by the young man's action and asks if he's sure he wants to do that. At that, the redhead appears and asks why he is handing over his very important weapon to them. The hero explains that it's normal not to let just anyone enter armed and that they are right to be vigilant. Furthermore, he claims to be stronger with his bare hands, and the guard's jaw drops at the revelation. The two sisters and the housekeeper are astonished by the confidence of the mysterious, masked warrior. With that, the guard accepts and promises that he will take care of the weapon with the utmost care in the entire world. Our hero thinks to himself that this is actually no joke to him. In a flashback, he remembers trying to use a sword, but his body wouldn't move with precision. It was easy to imagine being defeated before attacking, so he preferred to fight with his own hands. So, handing over his weapon wasn't a problem, but he still felt a little tense about everything. He reflects that meeting someone with real power is scary, and that there's no way to escape it. With everything settled, The housekeeper guides him down the corridor of the large and luxurious ducal mansion. The warrior walks towards the door, hoping that everything goes well with the noble man. The sword is a supreme, grade masterpiece called the Black Blade Dillahand. It never chips or scratches, but its only drawback is that its luck status is variable. The hero tells the guard that if he's interested, he can hold it later under supervision. As the young man walks away, the two girls and the guard just watch him in silence from the outside. The door closes, and our protagonist finally goes to meet the mysterious Duke of the mansion. With that, Karen runs towards the captain, and her older sister just watches the scene from afar. With sparkling eyes, the redhead stares at the weapon and is completely enchanted by its beauty. The girl then excitedly asks him to show her the weapon, as she really wanted to see it up close. The guard gives an awkward smile while the older sister finds the situation quite amusing. Looking at the weapon, he notices that its blade really looks like a rare and valuable jewel. The man comments that the sword doesn't seem very durable while holding it together with the girl. The redhead asks what style he uses, and the captain deduces it's close, quarters combat, and overpowering. The captain of the guard then helps the young woman carefully hold the sword with both hands. He asks if she is ready and warns that he is going to let go of the weapon for her to hold on her own now. The girl makes an expression of effort as she tries to prepare for the object's weight. Suddenly, the redhead screams that the sword is too heavy, and the other two are left with their jaws dropped. The young woman can't bear the weight and ends up dropping the weapon, which falls towards the ground. The sword then crashes down and hits the stone floor of the grand mansion's courtyard hard. Karen manages to catch the weapon in time, but it had already embedded itself slightly into the floor stones. The sword's blade is stuck in the stone, and the girl can't believe what happened. The three of them are completely shocked and speechless at the absurd power of that weapon. The guard picks up the sword and is impressed because it cut through the stones just by falling on the ground. He then reflects that he doubted the young man was from Vertar, but now he is certain. After seeing the weapon and hearing that he is stronger without it, the guard has no more doubts. He asks if the young woman is okay, and Leafia says he is definitely one of those people. The older girl warns that they will explain everything to their father, and the guard agrees immediately. The scene then changes to a living room where the two girls are sitting and waiting. They wait nervously, sitting on a sofa as time passes very slowly. A voice thanks them for their presence, and our hero replies that it was no big deal for him. Karen then whispers to her sister that this was why they weren't allowed to stay by his side. She says that from their voices, you can tell they treat him with respect because her father needs to maintain his dignity. With that, the older girl sighs and seems a little worried about what's happening. The redhead feels terrible because her parents had to bow to her savior in the room. At that, the older one looks at her sister with a very worried expression on her face. She bites her lip, thinking about what might be happening with her parents in the other room. The older one then asks if the other really has time to be lamenting right now. She then reminds the younger one that she just broke the stones of the mansion's courtyard. The girl is embarrassed as she remembers the mess she caused with the hero's sword. With that, the young woman starts to cry and wonders if she's causing trouble for everyone. The girl then defends herself and shouts that she didn't even use any strength to hold the sword. She gets angry and wonders what kind of absurd cutting power that weapon had. The older sister lets out a tired sigh at the whole situation and the younger one's drama. The redhead sulks and thinks she can't make up for the problem she caused now. The older one remembers what the warrior told her, to do everything she couldn't and enjoy it. With a smile, she says her sister doesn't have time to be sulking because of this. The younger one blushes and has a determined expression after those words. The older one says the hero tried to hide it, but she noticed something important about him. She is sure that he healed her sister's lead, knowing that the emperor could get angry. That's why they need to thank him properly and grant any wish he may have in the future. The redhead wonders why he doesn't accept any kind of reward for his deeds. The older one suggests that maybe for him, it was just the obvious thing to do. The fact that he refuses the reward proves that he is not a civilian, and the redhead agrees. A reward from a duke is tempting, with titles, land, and a lot of money involved. The reward also includes the introduction of potential wives for marriage, but the woman says that after what happened at the tower, she really wants to see his face again. The young woman gets embarrassed and says it would be bad if she were the only one who couldn't see him. Karen accuses her sister of being into him and says if she's not careful, she'll monopolize him. She says that if her sister confesses her feelings, she might reveal what his face with the scar looks like. The two sisters stare at each other intensely, and an air of rivalry arises between them. With that, the two cross their arms, and an awkward silence fills the room. The older one blushes and says she doesn't want to monopolize him. She's just interested in the young man. The redhead says that's all the more reason to make sure her sister doesn't see him at all. The older one is flustered by the taunt and complains angrily to her younger sister. Meanwhile, our hero is sitting in a room with the Duke and his wife, talking. The Duke and his wife break into a cold sweat and wonder why all of this was happening to them. The noble stares at the warrior and just watches the man do one unexpected thing after another. The Duke wonders why the warrior is being so considerate to all of them. He feels they owe the young man a lot, but the hero acts humbly all the time. The noble thinks there's no reason for so much caution, as the young man doesn't try to take advantage of them. He knows the young man could demand anything for his deeds, but he doesn't. The noble couple knows they can't refuse any request the warrior might make. Because of his ties to the emperor, the man in armor holds a position superior to theirs. However, the Duke can't read his expression and thinks he has very strong support. If his goal were to hide, accepting the reward would be the best way to avoid attention. With that, the Duke and his wife begin to wonder if they are being tested by the warrior. The nobleman has never liked someone so much at a first meeting, but can't read him at all. At the same time, the young man is the most unsettling, because the Duke can't fully understand him. He feels that the warrior is silently asking how a Duke deals with people like him. The atmosphere becomes tense as the man in armor stares at him in complete silence in the room. Letting him leave with nothing could tarnish the family name and generate bad rumors about them. The nobleman realizes that not everyone accepts rewards, and that this points out his carelessness. He remembers that the hero used an elixir to save her, and warned him not to have any openings. The Duke thinks that the young man not only saved her, but also filled the void in their hearts. But the couple cannot lament, and is happy to have had the chance to meet him. The nobleman says he feels ashamed, but the whole situation also touches upon their family's honor. The warrior then replies that he understands and that he will leave it to them as long as it's reasonable. The Duchess smiles and assures him that it is actually a great honor for the family. With the positive response, the Duke lets out a sigh of relief for having managed to convince him. The nobleman then raises 3 fingers and says he would like to thank him with 3 things. He offers the use of one of his villas, a sum of money, and the family's support. The couple bows and humbly asks our hero to accept the generous offer. The nobleman was sure this was the right answer, as the villa would be a base for Vertar. For them, it was a way to create ties with someone under the emperor's command. With a faint blush on his helmet, the protagonist says he will gladly accept the offer. The Duke is relieved and thinks it seems they managed to give him the correct answer. He then asks if the young man has time today for his daughters to show him the villa. The young man thanks them and says that would be a great help, so he'll leave it to them. The Duke then asks his wife to escort him to the room where their daughters are waiting. With that, the Duchess calls him and asks him accompany her to the other room of the mansion. The warrior gets up and follows the woman while the nobleman is left alone, drinking his tea. Alone in the room, the man lets out a long sigh of relief that everything went well. He then reflects that his daughter Karen was truly saved by an incredible and noble man. In another room, our hero thinks that the whole conversation was very stressful. The redhead comments that he doesn't seem to like the idea of receiving rewards very much. But the protagonist says it's because he's obviously wearing this heavy armor. The older girl smiles and tells him to make himself at home, as the house is also his now. Karen then questions why he couldn't fake his happiness a little better. The young woman argues that there's no way someone wouldn't be happy with a reward from her father. He then reveals that he is very happy because he was practically penniless. But the young man says that on second thought, receiving such an insane reward is frightening. Our hero thinks that if he were alone, he'd be punching the air with so much happiness. The older girl then calls him and says she knows it might be a bit untimely. She asks if he is sure the reward is enough, and if he wants to ask for more. The young man is confused because he doesn't understand the support part, but he knows he got a house and money. With that, he replies that it was something decided between adults, and that she doesn't need to worry. The protagonist then asks if they are okay with him receiving one of their villas. The two assure him they have no attachment to anything outside the main estate and have several houses. Karen, however, comments that it's not ideal for him to live alone, as it will be difficult and scary. Lifia describes that the garden is smaller, but the villa's building is almost the same size as the mansion. Our hero is shocked and asks if the villa isn't a house for just one person to live in. With that, he thinks that this is exactly why nobles are so scary and powerful. The older sister then asks if he plans for someone else to live in the villa or if it will be a base. The young man replies that for now, he will live alone and that she can call it a base if she wants. One of the girls asks if he won't be housing a lover, since a hunter wouldn't be single. The young man is embarrassed by the question and denies it on the spot, saying he has no one. Karen then whispers to her sister that he's the type for whom no one is good enough. With that, the protagonist wonders why the conversation always turns to this kind of topic. He says he'll be out of the house sometimes, but that they can visit the villa whenever they want. The two girls get very excited by his response and ask if he's sure about that. The hero confirms and says he'll even give them a spare key so they can come in whenever they want. He thinks that such a large villa still gives him plenty of private space and that he doesn't want ghosts. Excited, Karen says that in that case, they will definitely bother him a lot from now on. The young woman say they can go right now, and the young man agrees to go see the villa with them. They arrive at a huge mansion that now belongs to our hero as part of his reward. Inside, the house is even more luxurious, with fancy furniture and very elegant decor. The kitchen is gigantic and fully equipped with everything he could possibly need for cooking. Even the dining room looks like a fancy restaurant, with a very large table for everyone. With a smile, the older girl says that everything there is a gift, and for him not to worry. The warrior is shocked and wonders if he can really accept such a luxurious house. The redhead calls him humble in an odd way, since he calls her by her first name so casually. Then the protagonist enters another room that seems to be a library full of books. With that, Karen asks him to sit down and make himself at home, as the place is now all his. Sitting down, the young man thinks she's being nice because of the girl's newly healed leg. The girl, however, assures him that she's not tired at all and that he doesn't need to worry. The hero says kids shouldn't overdo it, and the redhead shouts that she's not a kid. He continues, saying he didn't heal her, just so she could push herself again, and she gets irritated. At this, the warrior panics because a rumor about him and the Duke's daughter would be terrible. The older sister just watches the scene with a smile, finding their interaction amusing. Then, he teases her, telling her to sit on his hard armor, since she doesn't want the couch. The young man even jokes that anyone would say the couch is better, and the redhead finally gives in. With a flushed face, she says she'll sit on his lap, and the hero agrees with a smile, but the protagonist is shocked and speechless when he realizes what the girl just said. Without a second thought, the redhead simply goes over and sits on the armored warrior's lap. The young man gets completely flustered and asks what she thinks she's doing right now. The girl gets nervous too and says she was just kidding and that it would be uncomfortable. At that moment, the older sister stands up and leaves the room, leaving the two of them alone. From a distance, Lifia says the redhead is lucky, and the young girl replies that she's not happy with the situation. The older one smiles and says she didn't ask if she was happy, and the other gets very annoyed. Then the young girl on his lap asks why he's still wearing the armor and tells him to relax. Our hero thinks about the possibility, but a problem comes to his mind at that instant. He remembers meeting Lifia in the tower and that showing his face would be very awkward now. With focused eyes, he decides he needs to change the subject as quickly as he can. The young man raises his metal hand, ready to put his new plan into action immediately. To change the subject, the guy simply places his hand on the girl's head and gives it a pat. With her face all red, the young girl shouts for him not to treat her like a little kid. Then he tells her to go to the couch because if not, her behind would start to hurt soon. The older sister comes back and asks why not, while the redhead keeps refusing the idea. At this, the hero comments that it's amazing the Duke trusted them to show him the new house. He says that normally a man would do it, since his past is not at all clear to them. The young girl then says that her father is careful and judged him as someone trustworthy. With that, the young man pats the redhead's head again, saying the Duke didn't talk to him much. To reach that conclusion, the nobleman must have met a lot of people, and the young girl gets annoyed. Karen says there's no way not to trust him because the guy used a rare elixir to save them. With that, the older sister invites him to dinner, but he turns down the invitation right away. Leafia smiles and says he really seems to have a very busy life, full of things to do. The redhead then asks him to let her know when he's leaving town, but the young man denies the request. She is shocked and asks why, but he thinks that meeting the Duke again scares him. With the negative response, the two girls are a bit surprised and don't know what to say. Leafia then tells her sister that there's nothing that can be done about his decision. Karen then asks him to stay in the city for a while, and the hero confirms that he will. He thinks that, besides, there are still two other people looking for him all over the city. The young man remembers that they are also from important families, and the young girl stares at him. The older girl then makes a strange gesture, and the redhead looks at her with a pouty face. The girl on his lap is completely confused and doesn't understand anything that's happening. The warrior asks what that was, and the older sister says it was absolutely nothing. Karen then rats out her sister, saying she wanted him to lift his armor's visor. Our hero just lets out in whole, not really understanding the reason for all that commotion. Embarrassed, Leafia says he's cheeky, and the scene shows that the redhead was punished later. The two sisters start arguing, and the older one tells the other to get off the warrior's lap. Then the long-haired girl simply takes hold of our protagonist's metal hand. Annoyed, the redhead accuses her sister of being jealous and says she should just admit it already. Leafia gets embarrassed, and the young man thinks that she doesn't seem to be truly jealous. Finally, the armored hero tells the older girl that she shouldn't do that. The two girls are completely shocked by our armored protagonist's response. With that, the redhead asks why he's turning her sister down, but didn't turn her down. He explains that Leafia is beautiful and high-ranking, so she probably already has a partner. The older girl then confirms that she does indeed receive many marriage proposals. But with a smile on her face, she reveals that she's actually still completely single. The armored young man is very surprised by the revelation, and the redhead stays on his lap. She says that men fall for her but get embarrassed, and never look at her again. The young girl explains that her sister longs for affection, but everyone ends up pulling away out of fear. Leafia gets embarrassed and asks her to stop, but he says she can't say anything while on his lap. Then the redhead tells the warrior to pat the couch a bit, and he asks confusedly why. She just insists that he do what she said, and the young man obeys without understanding. As soon as he pats the couch, the older sister suddenly appears, sitting right next to him. The redhead remains sitting on his lap, with a very smug look on her face. She asks if he saw that, but the young man is still processing what just happened. With that, the older sister just gives our protagonist a charming wink. Next, she simply takes his metal hand again, leaving him very shocked. With the two of them surrounding him, he thinks he's never seen anyone confess so openly before. Later, outside, the hero thanks the two of them for the help they gave him that day. The older girl smiles and thanks the young man for the precious time he spent with them. Then she reveals that the last gift, the family seal, will take 3 days to arrive. Leafia informs him that they will come in person and discuss the details of the property with him. The two girls get ready to get into the carriage and finally go home. Karen says goodbye with a smile and asks him to take care until their next meeting. The warrior tells her to go on, as her parents must be worried about her being late. With that, the older sister pulls the younger one, who didn't want to leave, into the carriage. The vehicle's door closes, and the two finally begin their long journey back. Our protagonist just watches the carriage slowly move away from his new home. With a wave of his hand, he says goodbye to the two young women who helped him that day. Alone, the young man thinks that he can finally take off that heavy armor. He feels much better as the carriage disappears from sight on the city's horizon. Inside the carriage, the older sister comments that time flew by and she didn't even notice. With that, Karen agrees and says that honestly, she wanted to stay there for much longer. The long-haired one wanted to as well, and the redhead teases her, saying she was lucky to be complimented. Lifia agrees with a smile and remembers that he also called her younger sister by her first name. The short-haired girl gets all smug and confirms that the young man did indeed call her that. At this, she wonders how he can be so calm and accuses her sister of wanting to see his face. The older one then remembers how the warriors saved her dear younger sister's life. She also thinks about the chance that he's the same man she met at the clock tower. Lifia sighs and says she really wanted to have seen the young man's face. Karen then offers to draw his face for her sister when they get home, but the older girl laughs and shows a childish drawing, saying her style is very unique. The redhead gets very angry and shouts that her sister actually draws much worse than she does. Suddenly, Lifia stares at a painting on the wall that shows the figure of a warrior from a distance. The younger girl asks what her sister is staring at so intently and sees the same painting of our hero. The scene shows a flashback of the young man taking off his helmet in front of the older sister. Lifia is completely enchanted upon seeing the mysterious savior's real face. Karen then calls out to her sister, pulling her out of her thoughts about what had happened. The redhead asks again what happened and why her sister suddenly got so quiet. In her thoughts, the young man appears, sweating a little and looking awkward with the whole situation. The long-haired girl just gives a satisfied smile, remembering the warrior's face. She thinks that the man teased her until the very last second they spent together there. With that, the younger one realizes he really was the man her sister met at the tower. Lifia confirms that yes, and that there's no doubt it was the same young man as before. Then she asks if the meeting was a coincidence, since no one knows she likes the view. But if he already knew, it would make sense for him to have shown up there on a very busy day. That way, he could check on Karen's healed leg when she went to get her at the tower. The two wonder if he was thinking about them, and the older one says it's the only explanation. With a smile, she concludes that he is a very kind person who truly cares. She remembers he used an expensive elixir and must have been punished by his superiors. But he said he didn't regret it and wanted Karen to enjoy her new freedom. He chose words to lift the guilt from Karen's heart and said she owed no debts. That was the mark of someone truly strong, and he stayed in the tower to watch over the bad guys. If it was all intentional, she wonders how much effort he put in without anyone noticing. The more she thinks about it, the more possibilities arise, and her face gets very flushed. Alone and in silence, he did everything without drawing attention, and she thinks about what he's like. The older girl concludes that he is truly wonderful and gets all thoughtful in the carriage. She says she can't wait 3 days because she has so much to say to our hero. The younger one then notices that her sister has a dreamy look on her face and is completely smitten. Lifia thinks that the young man cares a lot about Karen, and that just makes her want to get closer to him. She makes up her mind and says she's going to get even closer to the mysterious armored warrior. Karen gets flustered and just lets out as she thinks about what her sister just said. The redhead then wonders what their father would say if he knew what she was feeling. To her father, the warrior is someone completely out of his league and unreachable. The older one wonders how the Duke would react and gets a little worried about the situation. The scene shows their father coughing in a room and wondering if they are okay. Meanwhile, at the inn, the owner is sad that he won't see the young man's face around as often. He says the young man didn't come back last night and that he already had a feeling about it. Our protagonist then appears at the tavern, eating a very juicy and tasty meal. He assures him that even though he's not staying there anymore, he'll still come back to eat at the establishment. The innkeeper asks if he likes the food that much, and the hero confirms that it's good. With that, the man is happy and says he'll always be waiting for the young man to show up. Curious, the innkeeper asks where he plans to stay and offers to help him find something. But the young man reveals that he was given a house and that he plans to live in it for a good while. The bar owner is completely shocked by the news and can't believe what he just heard. The hero then explains that he tried to refuse, but the Duke insisted and gave him the house. The man says he must be joking, because that was something simply impossible. With a smile, the young man says they looked for him everywhere just to thank him. The innkeeper then says that the Duke giving away a villa is a big deal, and that he's lucky. Our protagonist agrees and says the new house is indeed very large and spacious. And with that, a new chapter of our hero's life begins in that bustling city. The bar owner says that's not what he meant, and that the young man knows very well what he's talking about. He explains that the number of villas the nobles own is basically a symbol of their power. This means the Duke found it more advantageous to have a direct connection with him than to keep the symbol. Our hero is speechless, just processing the information he just received from the man. With that, the innkeeper gives him a serious look and asks who the heck he really is to cause all this. The young man says he's just a normal guy, but the man denies it right away and doesn't believe a word. Changing the subject, the young man hands over a bag of money and thanks him for all the help he received. The tavern owner takes the bag and asks what it is, as it seems to have a lot of money inside. Kai confirms that it's money and says the man hid him and helped him with his advice. The man gets scared and refuses, saying he doesn't want money because, honestly, it scares him. The young man says there's nothing scary about it, but the man retorts that it's the scary guys who say that. Then the bar owner says that if he says the money is from a scary guy, the situation doesn't get any better. He says he's stingy by nature, but feels bad for getting him involved in something so crazy and dangerous. The man from the bar explains that he's referring to hiding him from the Duke, and that he never thought about that before. Honestly, he admits that he was breaking out in a cold sweat the whole time, afraid of being found out. Our hero then says with a tired expression that he can imagine all the pressure he felt. But the man says that even so, he wants to treat his guests well, and the young man thanks him for everything. The innkeeper boasts that he's pretty cool, but gets embarrassed when the young man agrees with him. With the conversation over, the protagonist starts to put on his helmet to leave the place. The man then says goodbye with a smile and asks the young man to come back and visit more often. Now in his full armor, the warrior waves and assures him that he will definitely come back one day. The bell on the door jingles, and the innkeeper is left alone, holding the heavy bag of coins he received. He looks at the bag and thinks about everything that happened while the young man was staying there. Then the man opens the bag and is completely blinded by the gleam of countless gold coins. He's in shock and can't believe the amount of money he just received. Sitting on the floor, he wonders how an ordinary guy can give away so much money so easily. The scene then takes us to one of the three great powers of the city of Aldea at that moment. Inside the holy church, a voice calls out to someone to get their attention in the sacred place. The white-haired girl complains and asks them not to touch her face like that again. Then we see another young woman holding her and saying that this is what her sister really looks like now. Introducing Marie, Nina's older sister, who asks who the other one thinks she is. The older one asks how many times they're going to do this, and Nina replies that it's the 7th time. Marie then accuses her of doing it on purpose, but the young woman denies everything right away. Nina complains about her sister's rude language, who sits on a bench to relax a bit. She also asks Marie not to cross her legs, as it ruins her pretty appearance. The older one defends herself, saying it's fine since no one from outside the family is watching. But with a serious look, she says she has the ability to act properly when she needs to. With a saintly expression, the young woman assures them she can always pretend to be a proper person. She then asks, "See," and the other asks her not to look at her like that again. The older sister teases her, saying she's gotten more serious since she regained her sight. She says it's not wrong to let her guard down once in a while, but the other accuses her of doing it every day. The two then start to argue as we see a table full of food nearby. At that moment, Marie thinks to herself that since her sister got her sight back, everything has changed. She has been brighter than anyone and enjoys every day with great happiness. The older sister reflects that they had never seen her this way before it all happened. At this, the white-haired young woman comments that the guy in black does the coolest things. Her sister agrees, saying he saved her all by himself and used the universal elixir for free. Nina confirms that yes, and that he actually saved 3 of them at once that day. The two then agree that the mysterious warrior's feat was something simply incredible. With a flushed face, she says that his face and his heart are wonderful, and he's her type. Her sister asks if that means he's her type too, but the young woman denies it on the spot. The older one says they'll see about that, and that at her age, she shouldn't aim for someone like that. She explains that if he can give away elixirs for free, he's definitely part of Vertar. With that, the older sister warns that he must have hundreds of rivals out there in the city. But the young woman gets excited and says it's precisely because of her age that she has a chance. The white-haired girl gets a determined and very embarrassed look on her face. Meanwhile, the older sister just smiles, finding the younger one's reaction very amusing and cute. Suddenly, another nun appears and asks the two of them to take up their duties at that moment. The older one then agrees with a smile and says they are on their way to take care of everything. She then turns to her sister and asks if they should go to their daily tasks together. Nin answers with a very quiet eyes, her face completely red with embarrassment. With sparkling eyes, she then calls out to the sister who had teased her about the mysterious young man. And so the Ansige sisters walk together down the hall, devoted to their service in the church. The two young women smile serenely as they continue with their daily tasks at the location. They then eagerly await the day they can meet the hero in black again. The story jumps forward 3 days, and we see Marie sitting on a bench with an exhausted look on her face. Suddenly, a red-haired girl appears and accuses her of slacking off from work once again. The nun is startled by the voice and says that it's Lifia, and that she's not slacking off, but on a break. Mary comments that it's been a while since she's seen her, and the redhead reminds her she shouldn't be in the garden. Lifia apologizes for scolding her and asks her friend to sit down for a bit to chat with her. The two then walk toward the bench so they can talk a little more in private. With that, the two young women sit on the bench and calmly start to catch up. Marie then asks curiously if her friend's younger sister, Karen, didn't come with her today. The redhead explains that she's talking with Nina outside, and the nun understands the situation. Lifia says that if they are there, it's because the ducal house managed to thank the hero in black. At this, the nun reveals that her sister wants to see him every day because she really liked the mysterious young man. The redhead laughs and says that Karen is no different and that she found someone to cling to besides her. Mary comments that the young redhead used to be attached at the hip with Lifia and now lives on the hero's lap. Her friend says that even in pain, she stayed the whole time, and the nun is surprised by the story. The red-haired young woman then gives a very satisfied smile as she remembers the funny scene. Marie concludes that this hero in black really has something that draws people to him. Lifia agrees and says he is the most wonderful person she has ever met in her entire life. The nun says that's a strong statement, and her friend assures her that she'll understand when she meets him. Curious, the white-haired girl asks if they gave the young man a huge reward. The older one then insists and asks her friend to tell her what happened. Just for reference, the redhead explains that her house hasn't yet decided how to thank him, and that's why she wants to know. She then threatens to tell the truth about Marie if her friend leaks the information to anyone. With the secret guaranteed, the young woman begins to whisper the reward they gave the warrior. She reveals that they gave him an entire villa and also a large cash reward. And finally, her friend says that they also gave him the family seal as a thank you. Marie is shocked and asks if the reward was only what her friend just told her. She argues that he saved Karen's life with a universal elixir and that this isn't enough. Embarrassed, Lifia says she feels the same way, but that there was nothing she could do about it. The nun, however, doubts her friend and states that there was surely something they could have done. The redhead then explains that the hero not only didn't ask for a reward, but also didn't accept what they offered. The white-haired young woman says that's an exaggeration and that a person like that doesn't exist in the world. Faced with her friend's disbelief, the red-haired young woman just looks at her with a serious expression. The redhead then repeats that he is the most wonderful person she has ever met in her entire life. She reveals that her father said the same thing, and that he can't compare himself to the mysterious warrior. With that, her friend says that her father is thinking of countermeasures for their next meeting. The nun realizes that if the dupe doesn't prepare himself, he can't even talk to the young man. The redhead says that whenever they talk about the hero, her father stops smiling, and that something about him got to him. The white-haired young woman concludes that if he can make the duke feel that way, he's a monster. With a sad smile, Marie says that both of them had their sisters saved by someone unbelievable. Her friend agrees and says that only someone like him, who surpasses nobles, could have saved them. Then the nun asks her friend if she thinks the hero in black is really from Verdar. The redhead replies that she has orders from her father to never do anything that would make him an enemy. The white-haired young woman understands that if he is from Verdar, it complicates their reward. She argues that he has more power and that even without knowing how the organization works, he gets everything. But her friend reveals that when they talked, he seemed happier with the money than with the seal. The nun is shocked by the revelation and says that none of that makes any sense to her. The narration explains that money is something you can get just by working hard for it. But no matter how hard you work, you can't get the seal of a ducal house just like that. Marie then thinks that if he's from Verdar and has the emperor's support, it's not strange for him to want money. The redhead, however, believes he was happy because the money would help him help more people. Hearing her friend's explanation, the white-haired young woman is completely shocked again. Lifia reflects that someone with money problems wouldn't be able to afford his weapons and armor. Then the redhead changes the subject and says she's sure the hero in black is her friend's type. The nun gets embarrassed and asks where she got that idea, and that Nina said the same thing. With a smile on her face, her friend comments that her younger sister is very smart and observant. Marie retorts that her friend has no room to talk, as she also radiates an "I-like him" vibe. With a smile, she threatens to tell the hero in black that Lefia has a huge crush on him. Elsewhere, Nina says she's finally going to meet him, and that they panicked because they couldn't find him. Karen agrees and says that even with his flashy armor, they didn't see him anywhere. With that, the white-haired young woman reveals that she thought he had gotten in trouble for the elixir. The redhead, however, denies it and says he would surely scold her for feeling guilty. She remembers he told her to use her freedom to do what she couldn't and enjoy life. Touched by the story, the nun thanks her friend and says it's very good to know all that. The redhead says that he has no regrets, even if he got told off, and that he seemed annoyed by it. She also thinks that maybe he knows the organization wouldn't lose him, because he has so many achievements. Nina then agrees with her friend and says that attitude is very much like him. The two then sit on a bench to talk a little more about the hero. Laughing, the redhead comments that he seems like the type who never gives up when he believes he's right. The nun asks how long he'll be staying, and the other says he has things to do there. The young redhead also comments that he seems very busy since he turned down the dinner invitation. They then speculate that he might be helping people or patrolling the city at night. With a flushed face, Nina sighs and says the mysterious warrior is so cool and amazing. Seeing her smitten friend, Karen says she's going to tell her something cool since she's so into him. She then reveals that he usually has lunch at an inn called Eldi and likes simple food. The white-haired young woman repeats the information to herself, thinking about lunchtime at Eldi. Suddenly, the nun stands up and her friend asks if she's planning to go there right now. Embarrassed, Nina says of course not, as they haven't even properly thanked him for everything. The young woman remains embarrassed while the redhead stares at her, not understanding. Karen then asks with a serious face if her friend isn't going to leave her behind on this mission. The scene then takes us to our hero walking calmly through the city streets. With that, He arrives at a bar and opens the door to enter the local establishment. Inside, Nina asks the bar owner what time that gentleman usually shows up. The bar owner looks awkward, and the hero, right behind them, is confused by the whole situation. The nun insists and asks the man to reveal the information because she really needs to know. Startled, the innkeeper replies that he usually arrives around that same time. Our hero realizes the innkeeper is being interrogated and just wanted to eat in peace. The nun then asks where the gentleman usually sits, and the bar owner looks uncomfortable. With a serious expression, the young woman insists that he reveal all the information at once. Scared, the man points to a specific spot and says that's right where he sits. Then the white-haired girl asks what he usually orders and looks at the menu. The innkeeper explains that there's nothing set and that the young man orders whatever he feels like at the time. Curious, she asks what he ate the last time he was there at the establishment. With that, the man points to an item on the menu, and the nun says she'll have the same dish. The owner shouts a very high-pitched highs, and the warrior is shocked by the note he hit. The young man thinks the other one seems nice, but it would be better to stay away from them today. But he decides it would be wrong to pretend he didn't see them, because the man helped him a lot before. So the warrior decides to go in, thinking things might calm down with another customer around. Peeking through the crack, he confirms that the innkeeper is indeed in a real bind. The man from the bar asks the two young women for a moment, while he tries to think of something to say. Our hero then thinks to his friend to hang in there, because he's coming in his backup. The young redhead notices his arrival, and thinks that she also had to force herself to enter the place. He pretends he didn't see anything, so he won't be dragged in the middle of that whole mess. With that, the warrior silently moves away, trying to find a spot to just chill. Suddenly, he gets annoyed and wonders why the conversation stopped at that exact moment. The redhead then tells her friend to hold her ground, and the white-haired young woman agrees. Seeing the footsteps approaching, the young man wonders why they are coming in his direction. Our hero then turns to the counter and says he came to help the bar owner. With a smile, the man thanks him and promises to pay him back with some really good food later. He asks the nun what she'll have. The warrior is confused by the scene as the innkeeper runs off in the background. With a gentle smile, the young woman faces our protagonist, who is left speechless by it. The scene then focuses on a small detail of the girl's clothing, a golden crucifix. Next, we see the star-shaped pendant she wears on her delicate neck. With a sweet look and a flushed face, she asks if the mysterious warrior remembers her. He then recognizes her as Nina, and says he's happy to see she seems to be doing very well. With a flushed face, she says she's also very happy to see him in good health. Hiding, the bar owner asks the hero to take it easy, since he's the one who asked him to keep it a secret. The man then apologizes profusely, saying he totally crossed the line. Desperate, the innkeeper tells him not to worry, and thanks him for his great patience. The warrior comments that she looks different, and that from the back, he didn't recognize her in those clothes. With a smile, the white-haired young woman asks if the new outfit suits her. He then replies that it will suit her, even more when she gets a little older. She thanks him, and he notices the crucifix and says he didn't know she was from the Holy Church. With a smile, the young woman is pleased, and in the background, her older sister watches the scene. Marie, however, looks at the situation with a very unhappy expression on her face. The older sister seems to not like the interaction between the two of them at the bar at all. Noticing the mood, the young man changes the subject and asks how the girl's vision is. All excited, she replies that it's perfect and that it's all thanks to his help. To test it, he holds up 2 fingers, and the young woman correctly says they are the index and middle fingers. Next, the warrior holds up his whole hand, and she replies that it's 5 fingers. Relieved on the inside, our hero thinks that her vision seems to be very good now. She says she enjoys her days more than anyone because she hadn't seen her family's faces in years. Moving closer, the girl apologizes, and he says she doesn't need to say something so heavy. He asks her to lift her head and enjoy it, otherwise the medicine wouldn't have been worth it. With a determined look, the young woman replies that she will do her very best to do that. At that moment, the innkeeper returns with 2 plates of food, thanking them for waiting. Impressed, She thanks him and says the portion of food is really huge. The young man asks if she ordered the large size, and the young woman nods yes. Her sister says that large is for adults, but Nina wanted to eat the same thing as him. With a cute little face, she explains that's why she decided to come here today. The warrior gets a little awkward and thinks that people really get into this kind of mood. Her sister says that if she can't handle it, they'll help, but the hero thinks it's a lot of food. The two girls look at him with gratitude and thank the young man for his kindness. With that, the warrior tells them not to wait for him and to start eating whenever they want. He reminds them that they have limited time and it would be a waste to let the food get cold. The two young women then finally start to eat their dishes with a certain shyness. But upon tasting the food, they are amazed and say that it's really, really good. With an air of pride, our hero agrees and says the food at this place is great. Annoyed, the bar owner slams a glass on the table and asks why he's so proud. He complains that only his dish was sloppily plated, and the warrior tells him to let it go. With a smile, Nina comments that the young man and the bar owner seem to be very close. The hero agrees, but the man retorts that he never tells him anything about himself. The young woman and the innkeeper agree that it's hard to deal with someone so full of secrets. All nervous, the owner of the establishment stammers and confirms that's exactly right. The hero then realizes his friend just spoke to him in a much more casual way. The older sister then asks the warrior to ignore what happened, just for today. Nina says she doesn't mind and asks him to speak more casually with her too. Desperate, the innkeeper begs them to please stop all this madness. Our protagonist finds his friend's reaction amusing, but he says the hero is the strange one. The white-haired young woman then, ready to cut a piece of her juicy steak. She then apologizes for the sudden question, but needs to know something important. Turning to the two of them, the girl says she has something very important to ask. The nun then explains that the time she can spend outside is very limited. With that, she asks if they could set a day for her to thank them both properly. With a blush, she reveals she wanted to set a date to thank him properly. Our hero is then surprised by the girl's sudden question. At this, the innkeeper thinks about leaving as the young man asks if he has to go to the Grand Cathedral. The young woman immediately says no and explains they'd be coming to his estate to thank him. She then says that if this bothers him, they will apologize for knowing where he lives. With that, the warrior wonders how she got that information, since he barely just got there. He says it's all right, and that he was just impressed by the news. The young woman then says she knows he's busy, and suggests next Sunday at noon. The young man agrees to the date and asks who exactly will be visiting. She then reveals that her older sister and she will be present. The white-haired girl finishes by saying that some guards should also accompany them. The masked man remains silent, processing the information of so many people coming to his home. He then realizes the girl's family is very powerful, and just thinking about it makes him tired. The hero asks if he can choose who comes, which leaves the young woman quite confused. He then asks for her parents not to come, which leaves her completely shocked. The masked man explains that he doesn't want a formal visit or to draw too much attention. At that moment, the innkeeper pokes fun at him for not wanting to draw attention with armor like that. Our protagonist gets a little annoyed with his older friend's comment. He argues that her parents should prioritize their work because something bad could happen. The warrior says that high-ranking people intimidate him and that he doesn't want to meet them. The young man then asks if she doesn't trust just her sister to go with her, and the young woman immediately denies it. The older sister then tells the guard that she will pass the message on to her superiors. Marie says that was her intention from the start, and that this helps a lot. Our hero is relieved and thinks everything is going quite smoothly. The older sister then gives a piece of meat for the younger one to eat. After finishing the dish, the older sister turns to the warrior, calling him Jet Black. The two say their goodbyes and mention they are looking forward to seeing him soon. The young man waves them goodbye as he watches them leave. The two sisters then walk towards the establishment's exit. With that, the door's bell rings, indicating that the girls have left the place. Alone at the bar, our hero puts his hand on his head, looking completely exhausted by the situation. Just then, The innkeeper arrives with his plate and asks if he's sure he's the tired one in this story. The warrior says that dealing with that group would tire anyone out, but the redhead says he's the one who's wiped out. With that, the young man lays his head on the table and says that to avoid an argument, they're both tired. His friend comments that he knew he wasn't normal, but didn't expect him to be from the church. Next, the bar owner notices that the young man's treatment of him hasn't changed at all. The masked man then replies that this really helps keep things the way they were. The redhead jokes for the other not to sue him later, and he promises he won't do anything of the sort. Our protagonist comments that the bodyguard was intimidating, and the other says she's from the elite ranks. He then asks his friend to tell him what he knows about them, as he had only heard rumors. The bar owner shouts that he should have told him sooner, and the warrior apologizes for the confusion. The innkeeper explains that they were polite to him and pressured him for information. For a guard, their attitude was correct, and that's a way of showing loyalty. The young man understands the situation and thinks it must be very difficult for the bodyguard. His friend then says it's like that for everyone who serves people in power, and that he would understand. The redhead remembers it was the warrior who said he had a public image to maintain. With a smile, the young man reveals that he doesn't understand any of that, and just said what sounded right. The innkeeper retorts that this just shows he doesn't need to worry about it. At this, he is shocked and asks if the young man is more important than someone from the church. The masked man denies it right away, and says he's so far below that he can't even understand their position. His friend ends the conversation, but the warrior feels that the misunderstandings are only getting worse. Elsewhere in the carriage, Marie says she's happy her sister got to see the hero. The white-haired girl then asks what her impression of the mysterious young man was. She replies that she was referring more to his character, and not just his strength. Her sister apologizes and says she was being watched, so she didn't have time to think about it. The young woman is shocked to hear the word watched and doesn't understand what happened. The older sister explains that people let their guard down while eating, and she was being tested. She continues, saying that as bodyguards, they already carry the failure of having let her be captured. On top of that, they also failed to notice him, which is unforgivable for them. The girl suggests he might have a weak presence, but her sister says it's a difference in level. The white-haired girl says it's possible he foresaw the confrontation with the innkeeper. The older sister continues, saying that either he had information that they were going there, or he has an extraordinary ability to read situations, and she will tell their father everything. With a pouty face, the young woman asks if she is referring to the thank you visit. The other confirms, saying that also caught her attention during the conversation. She explains that someone in his position wouldn't miss the chance to connect with their parents, especially when he's in a position where they owe him a favor, and that his excuse was strange. With that, the younger one realizes that the story about not wanting to draw attention was just a pretext. The bodyguard says his natural interaction doesn't match someone who dislikes powerful people. Besides, there are rumors that he belongs to Vertar, so he would be used to it. The two stare at each other in silence, thinking about the warrior's true intentions. The older sister suggests that maybe there's some trouble at the Grand Cathedral. She remembers his request and concludes that he wouldn't say something like that for a silly reason. Therefore, Marie decides they need to consult their father as soon as possible and hurries the trip. The white-haired young woman immediately agrees with her sister's suggestion. Through the carriage window, the coachman hears the request for him to go faster. The man then confirms he got the message and will speed up the journey. With that, he cracks the whip to make the horses run faster through the streets. The carriage then speeds through the city towards the family's mansion. The scene shows us a huge and luxurious house, which is the girl's residence. Back in the room, the older sister thinks that despite everything, he called her by her name. With a blushing face, she wonders if Lord Shikoku doesn't have good taste. The younger one notices everything and teases her sister, saying her voice and legs are shaking. The other freaks out, saying she didn't expect this to be the condition for the reward. She thinks she can't understand his motive, whether it's because he's from Vertar or something else. Her sister calms her down and says everything will be fine, because he is a wonderful, and generous person. With a smile, the white-haired girl says he is as generous as her own sister. Marie feels better and wonders if she can go thank him while being herself. Suddenly, she gets a panicked look on her face and asks if her sister wants her to pass on. The older one explains that acting would leave a better impression than being her true self. With a smile, the younger one says she likes her sister more when she is herself. Marie then smiles and says she'll take that advice to heart. Even so, the older sister stands up and says that man is simply incredible. She explains that he sensed a group's movements and sounded the alarm before anyone else. At this, the younger one wonders how he gets this information and that it's better not to investigate. The other agrees because the moment they dig deeper, he might see them as enemies. In the worst-case scenario, he could give up on them and no longer associate with their family. Besides, it doesn't matter how you look at him, because that man is a true monster. With that, she looks at the window and says there's a chance he might be listening to their conversation. But she laughs and says it's impossible since there are guards at the mansion's entrance. Suddenly, the two hear footsteps on the roof and get completely spooked. Scared, the younger one stutters her sister's name while looking up. The other tries to calm down and says it must be just an animal, like last time. The young woman reflects on the moment and thinks how kind he is for keeping them safe. She then reassures herself, thinking that no one could get in with the guards at the door. Finally, the day of the meeting arrives, and the innkeeper says he would be nervous in his place. Today, the Ansage family, who leads the Holy Church, will be paying a visit. Our hero thinks that he made sure the girl's powerful parents wouldn't come. He also says he has perfectly prepared the simulations for the meeting. The only thing that worries him is the conversation with the older sister, whom he has never met. If things get difficult, he plans to shift all the responsibility onto the younger one. With that, he thinks to himself that this is a simply perfect plan. The young man says he came to chat casually on an important day, and his friend asks, "What's up?" He explains that Duke Dago gave him a maid to take care of the estate, but he complains that the young woman keeps her distance from him, but the redhead feels sorry for her. Our protagonist is left speechless by his friend's lack of support. He wonders if he lost the other's sympathy because of the situation with Nena's escort. The young man changes the subject and points to two mugs with flaming drinks. He notices that the place is more crowded and that the number of staff has also increased. With a proud smile, the innkeeper says that all of this is thanks to him. The innkeeper explains that with the young woman's visit, rumors spread, and now everyone wants to eat there. The warrior thinks she will become an incredible woman and says he has something for his friend. He then asks if the redhead has heard about the new religion that has appeared to challenge the church. The masked man reveals that they have been preparing for a long time and that the plan is on a large scale. The bar owner asks if he heard it from a customer, and the other confirms that they are spreading rumors. He suspects they want to cause an internal conflict to weaken the Ansage family's power. Our protagonist thinks that people in power really have a tough life with so many problems. His friend says the young man wouldn't know about the information, and he asks what would happen if he didn't. In a mocking tone, the innkeeper replies that he would believe it, and the warrior is confused. With a serious look, the young man says the Holy Church can handle the situation with ease. He continues, saying they will take measures and wouldn't lose their dignity so easily. The redhead hopes so but finds the situation problematic because the group is growing very fast. But our hero says everything will be fine because the church is famous and has a lot of power. His friend grabs him and asks if he's already done something, but the warrior denies knowing what he's talking about. With that, the innkeeper looks at him with an expression of total distrust on his face. The masked man then asks the reason for that strange look from his friend. The redhead says it means he doesn't believe him, but the young man insists he has good information. He then reveals that he will ask the white-haired young woman about these matters as well. His friend agrees, saying she would consult him without a second thought. But the young man says he's not that trustworthy. The masked man asks for 10,000 for the meal, and the redhead complains that he only told him what he already knew. But the innkeeper says that because he brought the girl, the meal is on the house. The warrior is surprised and asks if it's really okay, and the other tells him not to worry. With a beaming smile, our protagonist thanks him and says that helps a lot. Then he says goodbye to the bar owner and leaves the establishment, waving at him. Once outside, the young man thinks that good deeds really do come back to you, and that he's quite satisfied